The world quiets down as the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. In the ancient heart of the eastern United States, the Appalachian Mountains begin to breathe a different kind of life. A gentle wind whispers through the dense canopy of oak and hickory, carrying secrets as old as the hills themselves. As darkness blankets the rolling peaks and deep hollows, a sense of profound mystery awakens. This is a land steeped in stories, where the veil between our world and another seems incredibly thin, especially when the moon is high and the fog settles low in the valleys. Imagine you're standing on a ridge, the air crisp and cool against your skin. Below, a sea of mist glows under the moonlight, obscuring the world beneath. From the deep woods, the distant call of a whippoorwill echoes, a lonely, looping song that seems to measure the passing of the night. It's in moments like these that the mountains feel most alive, their ancient spirits stirring in the shadows. For generations, people here have shared tales passed down, not in books, but in hushed tones around a crackling fire, their faces illuminated by the dancing flames. These aren't just ghost stories. They are the folklore of the mountains, woven into the very fabric of the landscape. They speak of strange lights that dance above the peaks, a phenomenon locals call the brown mountain lights, appearing and disappearing without explanation. Are they natural gases, car headlights from a distant highway, or something else entirely? No one knows for sure, and the mystery endures, drawing curious eyes to the dark ridges night after night. The lights flicker like silent, watchful eyes, adding another layer to the enigma of these old hills. And then there are the roads, winding, narrow paths that snake through the mountains, canopied by trees so thick that even on the brightest day, the road remains in perpetual twilight. At night, they become tunnels of darkness. Locals whisper of certain stretches of road where your car might inexplicably stall, where figures are seen standing on the shoulder only to vanish when you get closer, or where spectral headlights appear in your rearview mirror, chasing you for miles before disappearing into the blackness. Driving these roads at night is an exercise in courage, a journey into the heart of Appalachian lore. The forests themselves hold the deepest secrets. They are vast, untamed, and easy to get lost in. It's said that if you listen closely, you can sometimes hear faint, melodic sounds drifting on the wind, music with no discernible source, like a phantom fiddle playing a mournful tune. Others speak of hearing their name called from the depths of the woods, a clear, beckoning voice that lures the unwary off the beaten path. Those who have heard it describe a chilling, irresistible pull, a sense of being drawn toward something ancient and unknown that dwells in the shadows between the trees. The mountains are also home to tales of cryptids, creatures that exist on the fringe of science and folklore. The most famous of these is the Mothman, a winged humanoid figure with glowing red eyes. First reported in the 1960s, witnesses described a terrifying, yet strangely silent, being that soared through the night sky. But there are other, lesser-known creatures whispered about in the small mountain communities. Beings like the Wampus Cat, a half-woman, half-cougar spirit, or the shape-shifting entity with a stone finger she uses to pierce the livers of her victims. These stories serve as cautionary tales, reminding people to respect the wilderness and the powerful forces that reside within it. Think of the countless old, abandoned homesteads slowly being reclaimed by nature. Weathered cabins with empty, dark windows stand as silent witnesses to the lives once lived within their walls. Moss grows over fallen chimneys, and rusted farm tools lie half-buried in the soil. Locals often avoid these places after dark, believing the spirits of those who lived and died there still linger. They tell of seeing a single lantern glowing in a window of a long-abandoned home, or hearing the faint laughter of children in a place that has been deserted for a century. These are not malicious hauntings, but rather quiet echoes of the past, forever imprinted on the land. As the night deepens, the world seems to hold its breath. The fog thickens, muffling all sound except for the gentle rustle of leaves and the occasional hoot of an owl. The air grows heavy with the scent of damp earth and pine. It's a time for stillness, for listening. The Appalachian Mountains have a way of making you feel small, a tiny part of something immense and eternal. They invite you to wonder, to question what lies beyond the edges of our understanding. Each strange light, each unexplained sound, Each whispered story is a thread in a tapestry of mystery that has been weaving for millennia. If you find solace in the quiet of the night and the pull of the unknown, I invite you to follow along. Together, we will continue to wander these moonlit paths and listen to the whispered secrets of the dark. The ground beneath your feet here isn't just soil and rock. It's a library of deep time. These mountains are ancient, some of the oldest on Earth. They were once giants, taller than the Rockies, taller than the Alps. Over hundreds of millions of years, wind and rain have patiently sculpted them, softening their peaks, rounding their shoulders, and carving the deep, shadowed valleys we call hollers. You can feel that age. It's in the air, in the way the light filters through the dense canopy of leaves. It's a silence that isn't empty, but full of stories that predate humanity. The famous blue haze that gives these mountains their name isn't just mist, it's a chemical conversation. The trees, especially the oaks and pines, release a compound called It's their breath, rising into the atmosphere, scattering blue light and creating that signature soft, smoky veil that drapes over the ridges, layer upon layer, fading into the horizon. It blurs the edges of the world, making it feel like you're walking through a dream. A place where the line between the physical and the spectral is thin. This haze muffles sound, swallows light, and creates a sense of profound isolation. Even when Eerie, just a stone's throw from a well-worn path. And then there are the hollers. These aren't just valleys, they're worlds unto themselves. To drop down into a holler is to enter a different climate. The air grows cooler, damper. The sunlight struggles to pierce a thick canopy, and when it does, it comes in shafts, like spotlights on a stage of Muscovite stones and ancient, gnarled roots. Sound changes here. A bird call from the ridge above sounds distant, otherworldly. Your own footsteps are absorbed by the thick leaf litter on the forest floor. In the deepest parts of these hollers, where creeks whisper over smooth stones, it feels like time itself has slowed to a crawl. It's easy to imagine why people felt these places were gateways, sacred and a little bit dangerous, where the rules of the outside world didn't quite apply. Beneath the surface, the land is just as complex. This is karst country, a landscape riddled with caves, sinkholes, and underground rivers. The limestone bedrock, laid down by an ancient sea, has been slowly dissolved by water over millennia, creating a hidden, subterranean world. Some caves are vast, with chambers like cathedrals and formations that glitter like jewels. Others are little more than tight squeezes, dark fissures that lead into the belly of the earth. These openings are breathing. On a warm day you can feel cool, damp air sighing out of a crack in the rock, carrying the scent of whetstone and deep earth. It's the mountain exhaling, a slow, steady breath from a lung of stone. This hidden geography fuels the imagination. What lies down there, in the total dark? What secrets are held in places the sun has never touched? As dusk settles, the blue haze deepens to purple, and then to a velvety black. The world doesn't fall silent, it transforms. The daytime chorus of songbirds and cicadas fades, replaced by a new orchestra. This is when the soundscape truly comes alive with mystery. The first to speak is the whippoorwill. It's insistent, three-note call echoing through the trees, a sound so rhythmic and relentless it can feel like a spell being cast. Then, the owls begin their conversation. The deep, resonant hoot of a great horned owl from a distant ridge answered by the eerie, trembling cry of a screech owl much closer. Maybe just outside the circle of your firelight. Their calls aren't just sounds. They feel like questions and answers in a language you can almost, but not quite, understand. The rustling in the undergrowth takes on a new weight in the dark. During the day, it's a squirrel, a chipmunk. At night, every snap of a twig, every soft footfall in the leaves is an unknown. The sound carries, magnified by the quiet. Is it a deer stepping delicately through the ferns? Or is it something else? The wind moving through the high pines creates a sound like a distant ocean, a constant, low whisper that seems to carry voices on its edge. You strain to listen, to decipher the words that are almost there. A branch scrapes against another, and for a moment, it sounds exactly like a fingernail dragging slowly across wood. A sudden rush of wings in the dark, too close for comfort, makes your heart leap. It's just an owl swooping on a mouse. But in that split second, your mind paints 100 different pictures. This nocturnal world is a tapestry of suggestion. It doesn't show you monsters. It lets you hear them. It whispers possibilities into your ear, letting your own imagination do the work, feeding the old stories and birthing new ones in the deep, watchful quiet of the Appalachian night. The sounds are a reminder that you are a visitor here, and that when the sun goes down, the true residents of this ancient land begin to stir, their presence felt more than seen. When you stand at the foot of a great mountain, what do you feel? Do you feel a challenge to be conquered, a summit to be reached? For many, that's the modern story of mountains. But there are older stories, deeper currents of thought that flow from the very rock and soil for countless generations, particularly for indigenous peoples. Like the Cherokee, whose ancestral lands are cradled by the Appalachians, mountains were never just obstacles or destinations. They were, and are, living entities. They are relatives. Think of it not as a place to go asterisk, to asterisk, but a being to go asterisk. With asterisk, in this worldview, the mountain is a teacher, a guardian, a source of profound power and wisdom. The relationship is one of reciprocity, of give and take. You don't take from the mountain without giving something back, even if it's just respect, a prayer, or a quiet moment of acknowledgement. The very air feels different when you approach with this mindset. The wind, whispering through the pines, isn't just wind. It's the mountain, breathing. The streams tumbling down its slopes are its lifeblood. Many indigenous traditions across this continent and beyond see mountains as thresholds, gateways between worlds. They are places where the veil between the physical and the spiritual is thin. You don't simply hike up, you ascend. We touch step you, move further from the ordinary world and closer to something ancient and sacred. This is why certain peaks, certain valleys, certain caves hidden in the mountains, folds, are treated with such immense reverence. They are not for everyone, and not for every time. They are places of ceremony, of vision quests, of deep listening. This idea of mountains as guardians is a powerful one. They stand watch over the lands below. They are the keepers of weather, the givers of water, the silent witnesses to the passage of ages. Stories passed down through generations often speak of the powerful spirits that dwell within them. Some are benevolent, offering protection and guidance to those who approach with a pure heart and good intentions. They might reveal sources of healing plants or offer visions to guide the community. A hunter might ask for the mountain's blessing before seeking game, understanding that the mountain provides for all its children, and that he is just one small part of that intricate web of life. But there are also cautionary motifs woven into these narratives. Just as a grandparent can be kind and generous, they can also be stern when rules are broken. These stories serve as vital reminders of balance and respect. They warn against arrogance, against taking more than you need, against disturbing places that should be left untouched. They speak of beings that guard these sacred spots, beings that might lead the disrespectful astray, confusing their path until they are hopelessly lost, or they might conjure sudden, violent storms to drive intruders away. These aren't just spooky campfire tales. They are lessons in ecological and spiritual law. They teach that certain powers are not to be trifled with, that human ambition has its limits, and that the world is much older and more complex than our fleeting desires. Across different nations, the specifics change, but the core reverence remains, from the towering peaks of the West to the ancient, rounded mountains of the East. A common thread is the understanding that these are not inanimate heaps of rock. They are alive. They have memory. They hold stories. For some nations, a particular mountain might be the center of their creation story, the very place where their people first emerged into this world. For others, it might be the final resting place of the ancestors, a sacred burial ground where spirits linger. To climb such a mountain for sport would be unthinkable. A profound act of desecration. It would be like stomping through a cathedral during a funeral, utterly oblivious to the sanctity of the space. This perspective invites us to reconsider our own relationship with the natural world. It asks us to slow down, to listen more deeply. When you're in the mountains, try to feel that presence. Notice the way the light shifts, the way the temperature drops as you enter a shadowed hollow, the sudden silence that can fall upon the forest. These aren't just random physical phenomena. In a more ancient understanding, they are communications. The mountain is speaking, shifting, reacting. It's a conversation, and we've largely forgotten how to participate. We've been taught to see a forest as timber, a river as hydropower, a mountain as real estate or a recreational challenge. But the older stories persist. They remind us that the mountain can be a source of immense healing and spiritual renewal, but only if we approach it on its own terms. It requires humility. It requires you to shed the noise and ego of the modern world and simply be present, to walk with a soft step and an open heart. When you do, the mountain might just share a piece of its ancient wisdom with you. It might be in the form of a sudden insight, a feeling of profound peace, or simply a renewed sense of connection to something much larger and more enduring than yourself. The guardians are always watching. The thresholds are always there. The question is whether we have the eyes to see them and the humility to honor them. Out here, where the hills fold into one another like ancient secrets, the past isn't just a memory. It's a constant, whispering companion. As twilight settles over the hollers, the old folks will tell you that the world you see in the daylight is only half the story. The other half belongs to the shadows, to the things that linger long after they should be gone. Take the railroad switchbacks, for instance. Those sharp, winding turns carved into the mountainside were marvels of engineering, but they were also places of great peril. A misplaced foot, a loose brake, a moment of distraction, it was all it took. And sometimes, it said, the peril wasn't just physical. Railroad men, their faces smudged with soot and their hands calloused from steel, would talk in hushed tones about the haints on the switch. On nights when the fog rolled in thick as cotton, they'd see them flickering lights where no lantern should be, or a fleeting figure just at the edge of their vision, disappearing as the locomotive rounded the bend. Was it just a trick of the light? The mind playing games after a long day's labor? Maybe. But no one wanted to be the last man walking the tracks after dark. They'd say, the mountain remembers those who fell, and sometimes it doesn't want to let them go. This deep-rooted sense of the unseen wasn't confined to the railways. It seeped into the very foundations of the homes built by the first pioneers. If you look closely at the older cabins, the ones with hand-hewn logs and stone chimneys, you might spot strange symbols carved into the door frames or painted on the thresholds. These weren't for decoration. They were witch signs, meant to protect the home and its inhabitants from ill will and misfortune. Each mark had a purpose. A daisy wheel to trap evil spirits in its endless loop, or a series of interlocking V's to invoke the protection of the Virgin Mary. In a world where a sudden sickness, failed crop could mean devastation, these small tokens of belief were a comfort, a way of drawing a line between the safety of the hearth and the unpredictable wilderness outside. It was a language of hope, etched in wood, a silent prayer against the darkness. Nowhere was this blend of faith and fear more potent than deep within the earth, in the coal mines that burrowed into the mountains like dark arteries. To be a miner was to live with risk every single day. The earth could shift, the air could turn foul, and the darkness was absolute. So, They developed their own code, a set of superstitions that were followed as strictly as any safety regulation. You never, ever whistled. Underground It was thought to mock the spirits of the mine, inviting a kid. And if you saw a rat leaving the mine, you followed it. The old-timers swore that the rats knew when disaster was coming, that they could sense the groans of the earth long before any man could. Certain things were considered bad omens. A miner's lamp going out for no reason was a sign to get out, and fast. Women were forbidden from even entering the mine, their presence thought to bring terrible luck. These weren't just idle fancies. They were life and death rules, born from generations of experience, in a place where the margin for error was risen, in the constant, pressing dark, surrounded by the creaking and groaning of timbers holding back tons of rock. You'd believe in anything that might give you an edge. Anything that might help you see the sun again. And then there were the ghost trains. This is a story you'll hear from one end of the Appalachians to the other, with local variations but always the same chilling core. It happens on foggy nights, usually near an old, decommissioned line or a site where a wreck once occurred. You don't so much see it as you feel it. First a faint vibration in the ground, a low rumble that seems to come from everywhere at once. Then a mournful whistle cuts through the mist, a sound that raises the hair on your arms. Through the fog, a single, dim headlight appears, growing brighter, but it casts no beam. An entire train materializes from the gray, silent and spectral. Its windows dark, its cars filled with shadowy figures. It glides past without a sound from its wheels on the rails, trailing a cold draft in its wake, before disappearing back into the fog as quickly as it came. Some say it's the funeral train of Abraham Lincoln, forever retracing its mournful journey across the country. Others believe it's a phantom echo of a long-forgotten disaster, a troop train that never made it home, or a mail run that vanished into a blizzard one winter. Whatever its origin, those who've seen it describe a profound sense of sorrow that hangs in the air. Long after the train has passed, it's not a malevolent presence, they say, but a deeply sad one, a rolling monument to a tragedy the land has not forgotten. It serves as a stark reminder that some journeys never truly end. The flicker of a lantern held against the night, the groan of a house settling, the distant cry of a trainees are the sounds of this place. They are the echoes of the pioneers, the railroaders, and the miners who carved a life out of these rugged hills. Their stories aren't just told, they're woven into the landscape itself. The witch sign on the door isn't just a carving, it's a testament to a mother's fierce desire to protect her children. The miner's superstition isn't just a silly rule, it has a bond of shared fear and hope between men who trusted their lives to each other in the deep dark. These aren't just ghost stories to tell around a fire. They are the living, breathing folklore of a people whose lives were shaped by hardship, courage, and a profound respect for the mysteries that lie just beyond the reach of the lantern's light. The creaking timbers of an old mine shaft aren't just decaying wood. They're speaking, telling the tales of the hands that placed them. They're whispering of the pressures they endured, both from the mountain above and the lives lived below. In the heart of Appalachia, where the mountains hold their breath, some mysteries are not whispered from person to person, but are seen, hanging in the air like silent questions. Among the most enduring of these are the brown mountain lights. For centuries, these phantom lights have danced along the ridges of Brown Mountain in North Carolina. They appear as glowing orbs, sometimes white, sometimes reddish or blue, rising from the valley, hovering for a moment before vanishing as if they were never there. Eyewitness accounts stretch back to the time of the Cherokee, who told Tylees of the lights being the spirits of maidens searching for their lost warriors. Later, settlers spun their own yarns. One popular legend telling of a planter who went missing while hunting, his loyal enslaved man searching for him every night with a lantern. Scientific investigations began as early as the 1910s. The U.S. Geological Survey has studied them, proposing everything from refracted train lights to car headlights from a distant parkway. Yet, some of the most compelling sightings predate trains and cars entirely. Others have suggested swamp gas, or ball lightning, or even piezoelectric effects from shifting quartz deposits within the mountain itself. The rock straining and releasing energy as light, but no single explanation has ever fully captured the phenomenon. The lights continue to appear on clear nights and cloudy ones, defying easy answers and delighting those patient enough to watch for them. This phenomenon isn't confined to Brown Mountain. All across the Appalachian Range, in the deep, shadowed hollers, people report similar wandering orbs. Take them spook lights or ghost lights. In these isolated valleys, far from city glow, a solitary light might be seen drifting silently through the trees, following the contours of a creek bed, or bobbing along an old, forgotten logging road. Unlike a flashlight beam, these orbs have a volume, a presence. They seem to move with a quiet intelligence, sometimes approaching a curious observer, other times receding shyly into the darkness. These sightings connect directly to the ancient folklore of the willow. The wisp, known in European tradition as ignis fatuus, or foolish fire, these spectral lights were said to lead travelers astray, luring them into bogs and marshes. Appalachian storytellers inherited and adapted these tales, weaving them into the local landscape. The willow, the wisp, became a mischievous spirit, a jack-o'-lantern, or a lost soul with a piece of burning coal, forever wandering the mountains. Was it simply the natural combustion of swamp gas, methane bubbling up from decaying organic matter and igniting in the air? This is the most common scientific explanation, and it's a plausible one for marshy areas. But many of the Appalachian lights appear over dry ridges and rocky terrain, far from any swamp. This brings us to the core of the mystery. The clash between geology and folklore, science and spirit. On one hand, you have geologists and physicists proposing rational, measurable causes. They speak of tectonic strain, natural gas seeps, and atmospheric conditions that can create optical illusions. The mountains are geologically ancient and complex, a perfect laboratory for rare natural phenomena. Perhaps these lights are just a beautiful, misunderstood quirk of our planet's chemistry and physics, a light show powered by the Earth itself. They argue that every mystery has a rational key, and given enough time and research, we will find Italiano. On the other hand, you have generations of lived experience, of folklore that runs as deep as the coal seams. To many who live in these hills, the lights are not a geological anomaly. They are a part of the spiritual landscape. They are the haunts of the departed, ancestral spirits watching over the land, or even elemental beings tied to the mountains themselves. For them, explaining the lights with science is like explaining a song by analyzing its sound waves. It misses the poetry, the meaning. They argue that some things are not meant to be dissected, but to be experienced. The lights are a reminder that the world is more mysterious than our instruments can measure, that the veil between worlds can sometimes grow thin, especially in a place as old and storied as Appalachia. And so, the debate continues, often within the same person. An observer might watch the lights, one part of their mind considering the possibility of plasma, an ionized gas, while another part feels the ancient chill of a ghost story told by a grandparent. The two theories are not always mutually exclusive in the Appalachian mind. Perhaps the spirits use the natural phenomena to make themselves known. Perhaps the energy of the earth itself has a form of consciousness we don't yet understand. The beauty of these lights is that they allow for both possibilities to coexist. They are a physical phenomenon that feels deeply metaphysical. They are a scientific puzzle that is also a spiritual touchstone. Think about it. A silent, self-propelled light drifting through a dark forest. It doesn't make a sound. It doesn't seem to burn the leaves it passes. It's simply is asterisk. This quiet, unassuming strangeness is what makes it so captivating. It's not a dramatic invasion or a frightening encounter. It's a gentle tear in the fabric of the ordinary. It asks a question without words. What else is out there, moving silently in the dark places of the world, just beyond the reach of our understanding? The lights of the mountains don't provide answers. They deepen the mystery, inviting us not to solve it, but simply to stand in awe of it. In the deep quiet of a mountain night, under a canopy of stars, watching a phantom light drift between the ancient trees, it's easy to believe that anything is possible. The air is still, the world is asleep, and the mountain is sharing one of its oldest secrets. Have you ever heard the term "not"? It's a fascinating piece of modern internet folklore, spreading through forums and social media. People share these unsettling stories of seeing a deer that's just wrong. Maybe its legs bend the wrong way, Its eyes are too far forward, or it moves with an unnerving, jerky gait. That isn't natural. It looks like a deer, but your instincts scream that it's something else entirely. Something just pretending to be a deer. These tailies tap into a deep-seated fear of the familiar being twisted into the uncanny. It's that primal feeling you get when something is hiding in plain sight, wearing the disguise of something harmless. This concept of mimicry is a powerful one, and it's not just limited to the internet. It echoes much older traditions and fears about the wilderness. Think about it. You're walking through the woods, a place that's both beautiful and full of hidden dangers. You hear a sound. Is it the wind, an animal, or something else? You see movement, a branch swaying, or a creature watching you from the shadows. The not deer is the digital age's version of this ancient anxiety. It's the fear that the natural world isn't always what it seems, that there are things out there that can imitate the mundane to get closer to us. When we talk about these kinds of mimics, these things that wear the shape of another, it's almost impossible not to touch upon the lore of skin. Now, this is where we need to be incredibly careful and respectful. The skinwalker is a specific figure from the traditions of the Dine, the Navajo people. It's not a generic monster for scary stories. In their culture, it's a very serious and deeply feared concept. A malevolent individual who has gained a supernatural ability to turn into or possess an animal. To discuss it lightly or use it as a catch-all term for any spooky creature in the woods is deeply disrespectful to the Navajo culture from which it originates. It's a complex part of their spiritual belief system, tied to their history and their understanding of good and evil. So, while internet stories might borrow or misinterpret elements, the true skinwalker lore is something that belongs to the Dine, and we should honor that by not misusing the term. It's about respecting a living culture, not just borrowing a cool, scary idea. But the core fear that these stories tap into, the fear of a malevolent shapeshifter, is found across the globe. Nearly every culture has its own version of a creature that can change its form. There are werewolves in Europe, kitsune, fox spirits in Japan, selkies in Scotland, who can shed their seal skins to walk as humans on land. This idea is a universal human fear. Why is that? Why are we so collectively fascinated and terrified by the idea of Perhaps it's because it plays on our fear of deception. We rely on our senses to understand the world, to identify friend from foe. A shapeshifter breaks that fundamental rule. It can look like a loved one, a trusted animal, or an innocent stranger. It undermines our most basic tool for survival, our perception. It introduces the horrifying possibility that you can't trust what you see. The person standing next to you might not be who you think they are. That animal at the edge of the woods might not be an animal at all. Let's go back to the woods for a moment. We've talked about the not deer and the primal fear of mimics. What could be the natural explanations for these sightings? It's easy to jump to the supernatural, but our world is already full of strange and wonderful things. For instance, have you ever heard of chronic wasting disease? It's a very real and tragic disease that affects deer, elk, and moose. It's a prion disease, similar to mad cow disease, and it attacks the animal's brain. The symptoms are heartbreaking and, frankly, terrifying. Infected deer can become emaciated. They can lose their fear of humans, drool, stumble, and adopt strange, unnatural postures. Imagine you're out camping and you see a deer in the distance, but it's just standing there, staring. Maybe its head is lolling at an odd angle. It looks thin and sick, and it doesn't run away when it sees you. That would be an incredibly unnerving experience. To someone unfamiliar with CWD, it could easily be interpreted as something not deer. A creature that is wearing a deer as skin but doesn't know how to act like one. This doesn't debunk anyone's personal experience, but it does offer a potential, and equally unsettling, natural explanation for some of these modern legends. There are other possibilities, too. Sometimes, animals are born with genetic mutations, or suffer injuries that alter their appearance or movement. A deer with a healed leg injury might have a strange gait, a trick of the light at dusk. A moment of parallax error as you re-driving down a dark road. Our brains are hardwired to find patterns, to make sense of incomplete information. Sometimes, in that process, our minds can fill in the blanks with our deepest fears. We see a shape in the gloom, and our imagination, fueled by stories we've heard, turns it into a monster. But the folklore persists, because it speaks to something deeper than just misidentification. The idea of the shapeshifter is a powerful metaphor. It represents the hidden, the unknown, the duality of nature, the beautiful, serene forest that can also be a place of danger. The animal that is both a part of nature and a potential threat. It even speaks to the duality within ourselves, the civilized human and the primal, instinctual creature that lies beneath. Stories of shapeshifters are a way for us to explore these anxieties about the world and about our own place in it. They are the cautionary tales that remind us to be wary, to look closer, and to never assume that things are as simple as they appear on the surface. And this brings us back to the power of a story. A personal account of seeing a knot deer on a dark road, shared online, can travel the globe in hours. It mutates and evolves with each retelling. Just like the creatures it describes, it becomes part of a new, digital folklore. We may not be gathered around a campfire anymore, but we're still telling each other stories in the glow of our screens, sharing those ancient fears of what lurks in the dark, just beyond the edge of our understanding. The names and the details may change, but the core shivered down our spine remains the same. It's the feeling that we are not alone, and that not everything that watches us has our best interests at heart. These stories remind us that the world is still a wild, mysterious place. The moon is a sliver tonight, just enough to cast the trees in shades of charcoal and deep indigo. Our boots find their rhythm on the packed earth, a soft, steady beat. In the quiet of the woods, a twig snaps somewhere to our left, a sharp crack that quickly fades back into the hum of the night. It's probably just a deer, or maybe a raccoon, going about its business. Out here, you learn to read the sounds, to distinguish the ordinaries from the unusual. Most of it is just the forest breathing around you. Up ahead, a single point of light bobs in the darkness. That's Ranger Miller, his headlamp a steady guide. He moves with a quiet confidence that comes from knowing these trails like the back of his hand. Day or night, he pauses, waiting for us to catch up, his breath a faint cloud in the cool air. He points a gloved hand towards a dip in the trail. "Watch your step here," he says, his voice a low murmur that doesn't disturb the peace. "Roots like to hide in the shadows." We nod, our own headlamps dipping to illuminate the gnarled network of wood underfoot. The air smells of damp earth and pine, a clean, sharp scent that feels ancient. A barred owl calls from a distant ridge, its classic "who cooks for you" echoing through the valleys. Another owl answers. Farther away still, a conversation carried on the night breeze. These are the sounds that replace the traffic and sirens of the city, a natural symphony that you can only truly appreciate when you're immersed in it. We walk on, the beam of our lights catching the occasional shimmer of a spiderweb, strung like delicate lace between branches. We pass a clearing where a campfire must have been burning just an hour or two ago. The embers are faint red eyes in a circle of stones, winking slowly in the dark. You can almost feel the warmth that was there, hear the quiet stories that were shared around it. But the hikers have moved on, or perhaps settled into their tents for the night, leaving only this fading ghost of their presence. It's a reminder that we're not alone out here, that this trail is a shared space, a long, winding community of adventurers. Miller stops again, pulling out a worn map from his jacket pocket. He unfolds it under the soft glow of his lamp, his finger tracing a line. He frowns slightly, tilting his head. He hums, more to himself than to us. This stream crossing should be right about. Eerie. He looks up, sweeping his light across the trees in front of us. There's no sound of running water, no break in the dense tree. In the dark, the familiar landscape can play tricks on you. The map is a guide, but the trail has the final say. He folds the map and tucks it away. No matter, we follow the blazes, not the paper. The white blazes, rectangular marks painted on the trees, are our true guides. They seem to float in the darkness, appearing one by one in the circle of our light as we move forward. Each one is a promise that we're on the right path, a connection to the thousands who have walked this way before. It's a simple system, but it works. It, us, tu. A cool breeze rustles the leaves above, a sound like a soft whisper. It carries with it the faint, sweet scent of honeysuckle from a nearby thicket. We walk in comfortable silence for a while. Just the sound of our footsteps in the nocturnal life of the forest. The trail begins to climb. A gentle but steady incline. Our breathing deepens. Our legs burn just a little. But it's a good feeling. A reminder of the work we're doing. Looking back over our shoulder, the valley we just crossed is a sea of blackness. The lights of any town are miles and miles away, obscured by the rolling hills. Up here, the stars are incredible. Without the light pollution, the Milky Way is a brilliant, hazy stripe across the sky, and constellations you can barely see in the city are sharp and clear. It's like looking into infinity. Miller raises a hand, and we halt. He points his light at a set of tracks in a soft patch of mud. "Bobcat," he whispers, his beam illuminating the neat, round prints. "Fresh, too. Probably hunting." There's no alarm in his voice, only a quiet respect. We are visitors in its home, and we move on, leaving the hunter to its work. The trail is full of these small, unsane dramas, a world that operates on its own terms, indifferent to our presence, or just passing through, temporary figures in a timeless landscape. The path widens slightly, and the trees thin out as we approach a small, rocky outcrop. The air is noticeably cooler here, the wind more present. We step out onto the ledge, and for a moment, the world opens up. Below, the forest is a vast, dark quilt stretching to the horizon. Far in the distance, a single, flickering light from a farmhouse is the only sign of human life. It's a humbling view, a perspective that makes you feel both incredibly small and deeply connected to everything around you. The night is deep, but it's not empty. It's full of life, full of secrets, full of a quiet, powerful energy. And we just keep walking, deeper into Italiano. Sometimes, the most intriguing places aren't the ones you can easily find on a map. They are the whispers in the static, the roads that aren't quite on the official record, the sealed-off tunnels that lead to, well, who knows where. It's a different kind of exploring. One that happens more in the mind, piecing together fragments of history and rumor. It's easy to get lost in the official histories, the battles, and the great speeches. But what about the histories that were never meant to be written down? The silent histories. Take, for example, the rumors that swirl around old Cold War facilities. It was an era of intense paranoia and secrecy, where governments prepared for the unthinkable. And to prepare, they built things. Things in secret. We know about some of them, of course. The Greenbrier Bunker in West Virginia is a perfect example. For 30 years, it hid in plain sight. A massive underground fallout shelter for the U.S. Congress, tucked beneath a luxury resort. Guests would be sipping mint juleps, completely unaware that just a few floors below them was a self-contained world ready for doomsday, complete with a power plant, dormitories, and even a hospital. It was only declassified in the 90s. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? If something that massive could be kept secret for so long, what else is still out there, waiting? And that's where the whispers start. You hear stories from people who live in rural areas, especially in places that were strategically important during that time near missile silos or major military bases. They talk about roads that suddenly appear on no map, perfectly paved, that lead deep into a forest or a hillside and then just stop. Or they end at a heavily reinforced gate with no markings, no signs, just cameras. And an eerie silence. Locals might have a name for it, the government road or something similar, but no official record of its construction or purpose exists. Were these access points to smaller, distributed bunkers, listing posts, or simply forgotten logging roads that have taken on a life of their own in local folklore? The ambiguity is what makes it so compelling. Then there are the tunnels all over the country. You have abandoned mines and forgotten railway tunnels. Many are sealed, usually with a simple block wall or a pile of rubble, officially for safety reasons. But sometimes, the seal is different. It's reinforced concrete, thick steel doors, far more robust than what's needed to keep a few curious teenagers out. The rumors then begin to fly. Was the tunnel repurposed? Is it a storage facility for something they don't want us to see? Or does it connect to a larger, hidden network? In some Asitias, there are legends of vast, interconnected tunnel systems beneath the streets, far beyond the known subway lines and sewer mains. Tunnels used for secure, rapid transit between government buildings in a crisis. Most of it is probably myth, but every so often, a construction crew will break through into a passage that isn't on any blueprint, and the questions start all over again. And what about the airwaves? The empty spaces on the radio dial. For decades, people have stumbled across them. The numbers, stations, shortwave radio broadcasts of a voice, often female or synthesized, reading strings of numbers, letters, or phonetic words. Yankee Hotel, Foxtrot, 1-7-3-4. They repeat for a few minutes, then vanish, often preceded by a strange musical interval. The general consensus is that these were, and maybe still are, a way to send coded messages to intelligence agents in the field. A one-time pad cipher would make the message unbreakable. They're a direct, audible link to that hidden world of espionage. But who is sending them now? And who is listening? Tuning into one feels like accidentally picking up a phone line you were never supposed to hear. A fleeting glimpse into a conversation that's shaping events from the shadows. Beyond the number stations, there are even stranger murmurs. People with sensitive radio equipment report picking up odd, rhythmic pulses from remote, unpopulated areas. Faint, looping signals that don't seem to have a natural origin. Is it bleed through from a military installation? A byproduct of some forgotten piece of technology left running deep underground? Or just atmospheric noise that our pattern-seeking brains are trying to turn into something meaningful? Without a source, it's just electronic guesswork. It's the audio equivalent of seeing a light in a supposedly abandoned building. Your mind immediately races to fill in the blanks, to create a story for the anomaly. It's this lack of certainty that's so captivating. We aren't talking about grand conspiracies, but about the very real, very secretive logistics of a world preparing for the worst. Governments have secrets. That's a fact. And during the Cold War, the secrets were existential. They needed places to hide their leadership, to store vital resources, to communicate when all other lines were down. They built a shadow infrastructure, and by its very nature, it was designed to be forgotten, to be invisible. So when you see a strange concrete structure on a mountainside, or a road that leads to nowhere, or hear those ghostly numbers in the static, you're brushing up against the edges of that world. You're finding the seams in the reality we're presented with. It's not about finding definitive proof. In a way, finding out that a strange road was just for a defunct weather station would be disappointing. The power lies in the possibility. The possibility that beneath the quiet resort, leaders were preparing for the end of the world. The possibility that the sealed tunnel doesn't just end, but continues on into a place of profound secrecy. The possibility that the disembodied voice on the radio is sending a message right now that could alter the course of events for people who don't even know it exists. These aren't just stories. They are the echoes of a silent, parallel history that is still playing out, just beyond our sight, just beyond our hearing. And all you have to do is pay attention to the static, to the gaps in the map, and listen to the whispers. They are everywhere, if you know how to look. The landscape itself holds these secrets, etched into it by concrete and steel, hidden in plain sight. Let's delve deeper, shall we? Into the shadowed hollows and firelit cabins where the old ways still breathe. We're talking about the kind of magic that isn't found in leather-bound tomes, but whispered from one generation to the next, a legacy carried in calloused hands and knowing eyes. This is the world of the Granny Witch, the mountain healer, a figure as much a part of the landscape as the ancient oaks and winding creeks. She wasn't a creature of fairy tales, but a pillar of the community. Her power wasn't drawn from dark pacts, but from an intimate knowledge of the land. She knew which route, when dug under the right moon, could ease a fever, and which poultice of mashed leaves could draw the fire from a burn. Her remedies were a blend of practicality and faith, a mix of herbalism and prayer. Imagine her, hands stained with dirt and berry juice, her face etched with the lines of 1,000 worries and 1,000 smiles, sitting by the hearth. The air would be thick with the scent of drying herbs, yarrow, ginseng, and mullein hanging from the rafters, and the low crackle of the fire would be the only music. Her magic was woven into the fabric of daily life. Take the simple act of sweeping, You never swept dirt out the door after sundown, lest you sweep your luck away with it. And when a new baby was born, a silver coin was often placed in its hand to ensure a life of prosperity. These weren't just superstitions, they were rituals, small anchors of belief in a world that was often harsh and unpredictable. They were a way of exerting a little control, of speaking to the unseen world and asking for its favor. Then there were the charms, tangible pieces of hope. One of the most fascinating is the Bible and Botel charm. An afflicted person would provide a specimen, a bit of hair, a nail clipping, sometimes even urine, which would be placed inside a bottle. Verses from the Bible, particularly Psalms of protection, would be recited over it. The bottle was then stoppered tight and often buried, sometimes under the victim's own doorstep or at a crossroads. The idea was to trap the illness or the curse, binding it to the earth, severing its connection to the person. It was a physical manifestation of a spiritual battle, a desperate, powerful act of faith and folk wisdom combined. Protection was a constant concern. You'd see signs painted on barns or carved over doorways, symbols meant to ward off ill fortune or malevolent spirits. These weren't elaborate sigils, but often simple geometric shapes, a six-petaled flower known as a hex sign or a daisy wheel, believed to be a symbol of the sun and a powerful ward against evil. They were painted with whatever was on hand, a mixture of milk, paint, and berry juice. Perhaps their colors fading over time, but their purpose remaining strong. They were a quiet declaration to the world. This home is protected. This family is safe. It was a visual prayer, a shield made of wood and faith, and the crossroads. Ah, the crossroads. In mountain lore, these are places of immense power, where the veil between worlds is thin. They are places of decision, of transition, of possibility. But they are also places of danger. To meet a black dog at a crossroads at midnight was a terrible omen, a harbinger of death. To hear your name called when no one was there, well, you just didn't answer. You kept walking. Omens were read in the flight of birds, the shape of clouds, the way the wind rustled the corn stalks, a sudden chill, the hoot of an owl in the daytime, a picture falling from the wall. For no reason, all were messages, whispers from the other side that a wise person learned to heed. This wasn't about casting spells for power or riches. It was about survival. It was about easing a child's colic with catnip tea, about finding a lost cow by dousing with a forked branch, about feeling a little less alone in the vast, imposing wilderness. It was the magic of the hearth, the field, and the mountain. It was the texture of a hand-stitched quilt, the taste of spring water, the low hum of a prayer whispered into the night. It was the sound of a story being told by the fire, a story of resilience, of community, and of a deep, abiding connection to the mysteries of the land. It's a magic that smells of wood smoke and damp earth, that feels like rough-sawn timber and cool creek water. It's the quiet, enduring spirit of the mountains themselves. Imagine the process of creating a protective charm for a home. It wasn't a quick incantation. It might involve a walk at dawn to gather dukist clover. It might require a specific stone, found only in a certain creek bed, worn smooth by centuries of flowing water. The object would be held, warmed in the hands, while words of blessing were spoken over it, not kustonse, but maybe over 9 consecutive days. Every step was deliberate, infused with intention. It was a slow meditative practice, a conversation with the elements. You didn't command the spirits of the place. You respectfully asked for their cooperation, their guardianship. It was a partnership. This connection extended to the animals as well. The behavior of farm animals was closely watched. If the cows were restless and lying down in the field in the morning, a storm was coming. If the chickens refused to leave their coop, it might signal an unseen predator or something more unsettling. The natural world was a living almanac, and the people who lived there were fluent in its language. A spider spinning its web in a doorway was a sign of money coming, and to kill it was to invite poverty. A bird flying into the house was a more complicated omen, its meaning depending on the type of bird and whether it escaped alive. Life was a tapestry of signs and portents, and every thread mattered. Consider the tools of the granny witch. They weren't wands or crystal bowls. They were things of the earth. A smooth, gray river stone for drawing out pain. a gnarled piece of driftwood that held the spirit of the water, a feather from a hawk for clear sight. Her cauldron was the cast-iron pot that hung over her fire, used for brewing both soup and healing teas. Her book of shadows was her memory, a vast library of plant lore, remedies, and stories passed down through her maternal line. The power was in the ordinary, elevated by belief and tradition. A simple dish rag could be used in a charm to cure warts. A piece of string could be knotted to bind an enemy's ill will. It was about using what you had, finding the sacred in the mundane. This wasn't about escaping reality. It was about engaging with it on a deeper, more spiritual level, finding meaning and power in the very soil beneath your feet. There's a certain quiet that only settles in places like this, where the human world has pulled back, and let nature start its slow, patient reclamation. Every step up these old stone stairs feels like turning a page in a forgotten book. This hillside church, its windows like vacant eyes staring out into the mist, must have seen generations come and go. You can almost hear the faint echo of hymns carried on the wind, a sound swallowed by the rustling leaves and the drip of water from the eaves. It's not a sad feeling, but one of deep peace. A reminder that everything has its season. Look at the way the ivy has woven itself through the bell tower, a green tapestry against the gray stone. It's as if the forest is embracing the structure, pulling it back into the earth. I wonder who the last person was to ring that bell. What was the occasion? A wedding, a Sunday service, a warning of a coming storm. The questions hang in the air, unanswered, and maybe that's the point. Some stories are meant to be felt rather than told. Further up the ridge, the path becomes less defined, more of a suggestion than a trail. It leads us toward what's left of an old one-room schoolhouse. The roof has long since collapsed, but the foundation is stubborn, a stone footprint on the mountainside. Imagine the children who used to run these grounds, their laughter mixing with the sound of the creek below. They would have learned their letters by the light from those tall windows, with this same sprawling vista of fog-filled valleys as their backdrop. What a classroom! You could still see a few rusted hooks on the wall where they must have hung their coats on cold, wet mornings just like this one. It's easy to feel like you're the only person 4 miles out here, a solitary witness to this slow, silent decay, but you're never truly alone. The forest is alive with movement and sound if you just stop and listen. A twig snaps in the disses ear, maybe. A raven calls from a high branch, its voice a stark, lonely cry that cuts through the quiet. These are the new inhabitants, the guardians of these lost places. The mist is getting thicker now, wrapping around the trees and muffling the world. It's a little disorienting, but also incredibly beautiful. It simplifies the landscape, reducing it to shades of gray and green, forcing you to focus on what's right in front of you. And right in front of us, poking out of the fog, is the skeletal frame of a fire tower. Climbing it is probably not the wisest idea, but even just standing at its base, you can appreciate the view it once offered. Rangers would have spent long, lonely hours up there, their eyes scanning the endless sea of trees for the first wisp of smoke. It was a job of immense responsibility and solitude, a life lived in tune with the rhythms of the mountain. As we descend from the peak, the trail widens again, leading us into what was once a bustling company town. Now, it's a ghost of its former self. A few crumbling foundations, a set of railroad tracks disappearing into a thicket of rhododendron, a single, solitary chimney stack reaching for the sky like a final, defiant gesture. This place was built on industry, on the promise of work and a new life. But when the resources ran out, so did the people. All that's left are these fragments, these whispers of a life that was walking through these skeletal streets. You get a palpable sense of the community that once thrived here. You can almost picture the miners heading home after a long shift, the general store buzzing with activity, the smoke rising from 100 chimneys on a cold evening. Now, the only smoke is the mist drifting between the ruins. It's a powerful testament to the transient nature of our endeavors. We build, we strive, we create. But in the end, the mountain always endures. There's no grand conclusion to a journey like this. No final destination. It's just an ongoing conversation with the past. A slow-motion walk through memory and landscape. Each ruin is a question. Each overgrown path a thread leading to another story. The beauty isn't in finding all the answers, but in the quiet act of looking. of listening, and of being present in a place where time seems to have slowed to a crawl. The mist is a curtain, and behind it, countless other stories are waiting, and we'll just have to keep walking to find them. If you enjoy these quiet explorations and want to see where the path leads next, consider subscribing to the channel. Your support makes these journeys possible, and I'm grateful to have you along for the walk. Thanks for watching.